Welcome back to the Death Lineup. Brian and Double G here on a Friday night. Kind of late on a Friday night, too. I just got done watching the Elvis movie. You see the Elvis movie?
No, but we have like this Xfinity, like the Apple TV or the Roku box. Xfinity has their own because I guess we get it for free because Wi-Fi. I don't know. When we
Yeah.
moved in here, we got it for free. That's like a free movie this week. So I was
Mm.
thinking about checking it out.
If you don't know a lot about Elvis, I'm not sure if you're going to understand everything because it's so oddly paced. And I mean, I knew enough about his career that I was keeping up, but Crystal was like, I'm not exactly sure where this thing is going. Very interestingly directed, but that's what I was
How do you,
doing before
how do you
we jumped on.
how do you feel about um like his family was like, I don't know, wife and daughter heavily
Mm.
involved in like the production of it, so it's like you're telling a story from like their perspective kind of.
Yeah, I so that's the thing with a lot of movies and documentaries these days, and you can kind of blame MJ for The Last Dance because he was heavily involved in that documentary as
Yeah.
far as the story. But I feel like when these movies come out or when these documentaries come out, what I try to do is I try to find the one biography written by a biographer who is just like a unbiased reporter, right? Who
Yeah.
just wants to write. And so that's what I did with the Elvis story. There's 2 books out that a guy did that he wrote them a while ago too. So I'm kind of reading through those, and then there's a documentary on HBO Max as well called Elvis the Searcher, and so I'm going to listen to that, or I'll watch that. But yeah, I know a lot about that career just because he was so famous, but there's definitely some stuff in that movie where I was like, I don't think it happened that way, buddy. All right, this didn't know this was gonna start off as the Elvis pod, but did you see can you see my hat?
Yeah. I saw your tweet, XFL.
So it's the new XFL team, the Vegas Vipers. Our good friend Ben Cruz, who I think is going to be on the show next week when we break down the trade deadline. He said that he thinks he can make it, so we'll bring him on and go 3-man podding with our buddy Ben. But yeah, we decided that we're going to follow the Vegas Vipers and take it as our own team. Do you know who is the owner of the XFL?
Is it Vince?
It used to be Vince. Vince had it in 2 different incarnations, and then the person who bought it, none other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Really? That's crazy. I feel like I've been hearing about the XFL for like a decade now.
So the XFL originally came out in gosh, was it like 2000 or 2001, and it existed for 1 season, and
Oh,
they lost so much money, they canceled it. So it was co-owned by NBC, who had just lost the NFL, so they were looking for some more stuff, and Vince McMahon, and so they lost so much money, didn't do it again, and then for 2020, he restarted it. The pandemic shuts the season down, and then he closes it again. He's like, "I'm out."
that's bad.
So
That's karma. That's karma, man.
so I think, like, I don't know if they bought it out of bankruptcy court or whatever, but, The Rock and his ex-wife and his business partner, they all bought it, so it's starting up, really soon, I think. I think it's,
Those leagues always fail.
so did you see the other one, the USFL that started last year?
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so they're like on Fox or ESPN or something, but it's like a short season.
Mm.
They ran all their games out of Birmingham, Alabama. I think they're expanding to some new cities, but yeah, so because obviously, Ben's a bigger fan of The Rock than I am. And so
I didn't
he's
think
like,
that's possible.
he's like, we gotta support a team. We're gonna support Vegas, so we're supporting Vegas. And then
Is that the closest one to us, or is there an LA team?
no, yeah, I think it's Vegas. I don't think there's one in LA or San Francisco.
Interesting. Yeah,
All
interesting
right.
how like they pick their markets. So that's an interesting process to me.
Yeah, so I mean, we've avoided talking about the Warriors, but we do need to talk about the Warriors here. So the last time that we recorded, we looked at that schedule like we always do, and we were like, okay, how many games can they win? And so they started kind of good, right? They beat the Raptors the next day after we recorded. Then on Monday, they beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, those games were probably a little bit closer than they needed to be. So we're looking good going into Wednesday. No Karl Anthony Towns, no Rudy Gobert. The Warriors are playing at full strength, and they go and lose to the very average, I guess like themselves, Minnesota Timberwolves. And at that moment, I was being very overly dramatic, as Warriors fans can be, and I was like, I don't know if they got it. This game, and the reason why I thought that is because of this game, knowing that you have Denver in the back-to-back, you're like, okay, we just win the Minnesota game. We take care of business. We go into Minnesota and win. And then, like, you just sit everyone for the Denver game, the back-to-back. No, the Clay's not going to play. And now we saw that Draymond got hurt. He's got a calf thing, and he's also questionable for Saturday's game against Dallas. Steph is playing, I don't know, the most uninspired basketball I've seen from him in quite a while. And I maybe uninspired is the wrong word, but he just looks like he's overwhelmed out there. He's just like, I don't know. I have to do everything, and it's not fun. But what did you think about that Minnesota game? Like that, I thought that was one of the more disappointing games of the season, I think.
Well, Hulu butt cheeked me and it didn't record the game, so I only got to watch the highlights. And I like watched the highlights. I was like, "Oh my god, Stephen Curry is cooking!" And I
Yeah.
texted that to my group chat, and they were like, "Dude, he went like 9 for 21." I was like, "Wow, his highlights looked really good."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's like the one
Hulu
game
screwed
that
us.
yeah, that's like an important game to like have watched, and I didn't get to watch it. I was actually thinking, so I went on the NBA app. You know, you can't watch your home market until like 3 days after. They
Yeah.
had a stream up because there was like a Korean broadcast that they were going to allow us to watch. That I was genuinely thinking about doing, and I still might do it, but I haven't done it yet.
So what Hulu did was Hulu had the game as a 6 o'clock start, and it was a 5 o'clock start. So I don't know if the game
I
time
used
had
to mess up
changed.
like that. No, it was that I wrote it on my I wrote it on my calendar that the Warriors in the beginning of the week because my partner likes to know when the games are, so she can prepare.
So she can
And so
leave.
yeah, so I wrote them on a calendar and I wrote it like it was the correct time. So Hulu, they've had that time at least for this week.
Yeah, so what starts recording is the pregame. And so 5 o'clock was the pregame according to Hulu. So I got to see the first hour because that's what recorded was the pregame because they thought it was but that's only an hour long. So then it stopped. And then I went to the game to see if it recorded correctly, and it didn't. So what happened is I jumped into live, and I got to watch overtime, and I got to see how
Oh,
poorly they played in overtime.
it,
It was just one of those games where if they take care of business, they go 3-1 basically since from Friday to Thursday, knowing that they're going to lose in Denver. And like they're just not the take care of business Warriors this year. Like I feel like, the even last year they had their struggles in those take care of business games too, but man, any other Warriors team just goes up, that's a W. We're going to go out, we're going to kill this Minnesota team, and then we'll deal with the Denver thing. But no, they tried so hard to win that game, and they could not win that game against Minnesota, who is struggling as well, but didn't have their two best players.
Anthony Edwards is their best player in my opinion, but I hate the excuse that I feel like we continue having to use, and it sounds like such a dumb excuse, and I don't want to like give in to the excuse. I think I said it last pod where it's like they just like don't get up for these type of games. Like that's such a silly excuse in a professional league where you're making millions and millions and millions of dollars. And then Anthony Slater says it. What I think we all thought was that they might have tried harder if Rudy Gobert was there.
Yeah.
They like beating up on Rudy. They like, testing Rudy. And that's probably something that's true. But, Minnesota was coming off of a tough loss against Sacramento. That game went to overtime and they beat Sacramento the first time. And then they played them again like a day or two later and then lost. So they're coming off of a loss. The Warriors are coming off of a win. I mean, you could look into The shot chart for overtime. What was it? Like 5 missed threes. You look at the shot chart, and then
They
the
didn't
2
hit.
or
I
3.
don't think they hit one in the fourth quarter or overtime.
Yeah, I didn't see it. But you look at the shot chart, all the missed threes, and then the 3 made buckets or 2 made buckets they have are right in the paint. It's like this team is like, I don't know if their 3-point shooting is better than it was last year. I feel like they kinda they do have more shooters if I think about who left and who's still here,
It
but
sort of
it's like it still
depends on
feels like
if Wiggins can make shots. And when he did earlier in the season, they looked okay, and now he's not making
yeah,
any. He's not making
like, what
2-point shots.
when they're on though, like, when all these shooters are on, it's, like, really fun to watch and really like, wow, they really have some shooters, but at the same time, it feels like they're a lot of the time, like, really off. And it just is it's like they just keep settling for that offense, that 3 happy offense of just shot jacking, and that's why it's important to have a guy like Kuminga who's just like, I'm just gonna try to take it to the paint, and that's what Wiggins has been struggling in doing, scoring at all 3 levels, which is wild. Like, that guy can't, like, score. And then, obviously, Clay's having, like, the worst year of his career, in my opinion. He had those good stretch of games in the beginning of January, but I looked at, like, some stat called DFG percentage. I'm assuming it's defensive field goal percentage, which would make sense. And I believe it is the average shooting percentage of the people. No, it's how you defend your matchup in the sense of, like, say I'm guarding you and you score once and you don't score the other time. 2 possessions. Then I have a defensive field goal percentage of 50%.
Mm-hmm.
I held you to a 50%. So Draymond and Jaren Jackson Jr. have a really good one in like the 40s, like low 40s.
I saw that stat that you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they're Clay has like one of the worst ones, which is interesting. Like, right? This guy who I used to trust as like a defender, and we've known that his perimeter defense, not necessarily it is his perimeter defense, but it's more so his guard defense that has taken a step back because he's lost a step defensively. And I feel like there are some more quick guys that have kind of came into the league since became prominent since he's gone down, like a Darius Garland or like a John Morant have like kind of blossomed since he's been down. But at the same time, it's like he cannot guard people right now, and it's so weird.
Yeah, their team perimeter defense we know is bad. They they get duped into double teaming a certain shooter thinking that shot is going up and then it's not. Nope. Then they pass to the guy who's open in the corner. That happens a lot. I wonder if Clay is guilty of that. But you know what's so weird about this, and what, even as frustrated as I am as a Warriors fan, the fact that they are still like tied for 8th in this conference, this terrible Western Conference, so terrible. I look at so there's a last 10 games record for every team in the Western Conference.
In the league.
Well, I'm looking at the Western Conference one specifically. They Warriors are 5-5 in the last 10. There are only 2 teams who have won at least 7 out of their last 10. One of them is the Nuggets, who the Warriors lost to yesterday, and the
Let me
other
guess
one
the other
is
one.
yeah. Go ahead.
I know it's not Memphis because they've been losing. I know
They're
it's not New
3-7.
Yeah. Like, oh, I don't want to guess it, but is it Sacramento?
Sacramento is 6-4.
Who's in 4th place? Is it Minnesota?
Minnesota is 6-4.
Oh man, then it's probably like, is it like Dallas?
Dallas is
Yeah.
4-6.
No, okay, I don't know. You could do it.
The Phoenix Suns.
Oh yeah, dang it.
So Denver and Phoenix are 7 out of their last 10. The Grizzlies, they're struggling. 3 out of their last 10. So they're 3-7. And then you mentioned the Pelicans. They're 0-10. They've lost 10 straight. So all of these other teams, the Kings, the Mavericks, the Clippers, the Timberwolves, the Warriors, the Blazers, the Jazz, the Lakers, the Thunder, all of those teams are within 4 wins or 6 wins out of the last 10. And they're like all the same teams that are competing for these spots. So nobody is going on any kind of crazy runs to try and pull away. The Nuggets are, the Nuggets are still 4 games ahead of Memphis, but Memphis is struggling right now, so they've put some distance on them. The
How many games
Kings,
are they ahead of Sacramento?
six
Memphis.
and a half. Memphis is only 2.5 games ahead of
Wow,
the Kings.
Memphis is gonna join the whole 2 through 12 thing at this rate.
So the point being, all of these teams that are bunched together, they're all playing, around 500 basketball, and nobody is running away with any of these spots. I mean, the Kings, uh, that they have 29 wins and 22 losses. The Warriors are 26 and 26. So still, there's there's a 3.5 game difference there where one team goes on a bad run, that could get a lot closer. But you go all the way down to 13. The Warriors are 8. The Thunder are 13, and they're only a game and a half behind the Warriors. The Lakers are sneaking up, and the Lakers could make a trade, right? Anthony Davis, they're wholly dependent on Anthony Davis staying healthy. But like, it's just, if you're the Lakers, you look at the Suns at 6 and you're like, gosh, they're not that far away. If we just get one player, we can catch these guys. And my wonder is do the Warriors see themselves in the same light? Do they see this thing as like, hey, we could actually get to 3 and kill all this nonsense about the playing game if we find a guy? And we're going to talk about the trade deadline and the trades that are sort of thrown out there, because I want to get your opinion on some of the most popular ones from the writers, the beat writers and the national writers. But it just seems like, because if we are waiting, we're going to turn it on. The Warriors are going to turn it on. That hasn't happened because their record is exactly 500, and Slater loves to run the stat of like how many times that they've been 500 like throughout the season. The Kerr changed the lineup. They go small. It's supposed to create more offense, and they're still a 500 team. Looney and Draymond together, they're still a 500 team. Good Wiggins, bad Wiggins, they're still a 500 team. So I don't really know with their current rotation what they can do to change that. And yeah, like it's just like who they are. And if they continue to play who they are, then they're going to be battling for that play in, that 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 range. And they're going to be super frustrated when it comes to the end of the season and they're playing 500 basketball, because you kind of control your own destiny if you're a good basketball team, and either they are playing underneath their potential or they're an average basketball team. And that may be something that we just have to deal with, of the defending champions with Steph Curry, Draymond, Clay, and Wiggins are an average basketball team. That's the one.
They better. I swear, like, I just don't want to admit that they're like the LA Rams. Like, I can't.
Well,
like
yeah, the Rams are actually really bad. Some, there's injuries involved there, and the Warriors have had a little bit of injuries too. But it's like, the thing that I was trying to tell myself is there were a couple Shaq Laker years where they had injuries. They're kind of hovering around 500, and then they just kind of start winning games when they need to, and then then they get to the 3rd seed or whatever. And I just been waiting for that to happen, and it sounds like that's what Steph is waiting to happen. Like, he's still pretty optimistic about who they are. Draymond's the one who's very pessimistic about who they are. Maybe a little bit more reality check Draymond. But I mean, if they stand pat, do you foresee this, 10-game winning streak, 15 out of 20? I mean, can you see that in the future based off of what we've seen so far?
I have a few things that I wanted to point out, and I think that this. How do I want to start it? I'll start it differently. I think that they haven't been able to like get like synergy, and what I mean by that is that in the beginning of the season you had like MVP Steph, you had All-Star Wiggins, and honestly Draymond's been pretty consistent throughout the whole season. I think Draymond's been a great player for the entire season, but you had MVP Steph, All-Star Wiggins as like your things that were going for you. And in that first part, the first little stretch of the season first like stretch of the season. I think we're like the halfway mark. So how about pre-Steph injury, post-Steph injury? Pre-Steph injury, Steph MVP season, Wiggins All-Star season, Clay awful, Jordan Poole awful. Still had not found the rotation, so heavy JaMychal Green minutes. They haven't found out that DiVincenzo and Kuminga should be the 6th and 7th man. Clearly, they have Looney at the center. So like, that's what they were running with, and it was 500 basketball. Post Steph injury, we have streaky Steph. We have maybe one of the least effective, high paid players in the league in Andrew Wiggins, not playing well whatsoever on both ends of the floor. Okay on defense. Klay Thompson has been way better than he was since the start of the season, but I feel like he's kind of hit another little. It's like very dependent on the type of Klay Thompson we get each night, of if he can get going or if he's not forcing stuff. Like,
kind of inefficient though, not very efficient numbers.
yeah, and even when it feels like it's like a Klay game, it's like, oh man, he's hitting. Oh, what? He's like 7 for 19.
Yeah.
Or he's like 5 for 19. Like, Poole definitely better than he was in the first stretch of the season, but still, it's like I get so frustrated with the guy. But I'm saying that because it's like, yeah, good Wiggins, bad Wiggins, still 500, but it's like all those things haven't been able to be good at the same time. Second stretch of the season, they found Kuminga and DiVincenzo as these defensive stoppers, these good players that they could use. So I think I feel like there's a little bit of optimism in that sense, where it's like, if you can get a couple of those things to line up, like Steph gets back to a pretty darn good season, Wiggins at least becomes competent, and you have the Kuminga DiVincenzo thing working out for you. Klay has a couple good nights. Jordan Poole off the bench is what I would do. I think that there are that things can start going in your favor that way, but nothing in this season has told us that things are going to line up like that. So, last week I was like I feel like it's just always this. We get optimistic and then we get let down. So it's like, we're just going to keep having this conversation each week. And I guess that's what a 500 team is. We just keep having this conversation. But I feel like this Warriors team is a team that's going to see that, 3 through 12 is identical, and a couple games can, push you into the 3 or drop you to 12. And I think they're just going to be okay with like, okay, we lose one, we win one. We lose one, we win one. We're just going to be in, well, at least as long as we're still in it, right? And then by the point that teams start to separate themselves, where it's like, oh wow, we're actually like in 9th place, and we're like actually in 9th place. Like, it's a couple games to get out of 9th place. I feel like then they're going to start trying, but it's almost like they dug themselves too deep already.
Wasn't that 2 years ago though? Isn't that exactly what they did 2 years ago?
Yeah, but 2 years ago, I feel like they didn't have the roster. They didn't have the talent that they do right now.
They were 39 and 33 in that season. That's a better record than the current roster has right now.
Than they were. So as of right now, like going in All-Star break?
That's a good question. I don't know what that was. I know
the thing
that
is,
they
because you remember when
like,
Steph went down? Steph went down for like 10, 13 games.
that's when he fell on his butt in Houston?
Yeah, fell on his butt against Houston. Yeah.
The tailbone injury. Yikes.
Yeah, jeez. That was like one of the greatest individual seasons I've seen in my life, and it sucks that it didn't make the playoffs because of it.
So you brought up Klay. He is shooting the worst field goal percentage overall of his career. He is also taking the most shots per game of his career, which is kind of interesting. I didn't realize that. His 3-pointers made, it's the highest of his career. 3-pointers attempted per game, highest of his career. 3-point percentage is getting closer to 40. It's not quite at 40. Last year was the lowest that he ever shot it, but that was only 32 games. So through 40, he's slightly ahead of last year's number. Free throws are around what he's been the last 4 years. Rebounds, he's a tick ahead of what his highest was. Like, his highest was last year at a 3.9. He's at a 4.0. So even though he is a small forward, power forward Klay, as Steve Kerr said, still not really grabbing boards. The tick in boards is not higher. The assists are just average Klay year for assist. Same with turnovers, same with steals. Blocks, for whatever reason, are the really low for him, but really low is like his highest was 0.8 blocks per game, and now he's at 0.4. And so all of that being said, his plus minus is 2.7, the lowest of his good Clay years with the exception of last year. So who Clay is today is a slight tick down from who he's always been offensively. So you take the best version of
A
Clay.
slight though? Is it only slight, you think?
Well, it's slight in that it just takes him more shots to basically do the same. His excuse me. His highest points per game ever, 2016, 22.3. 2015, 22.1. 2018, 21.5. This year,
But
21.
it just feels like it's more volume and less efficiency to
Yeah.
get to the same numbers, which I don't think is slight. I think that's like a major tick. But
If he improves his field goal percentage and he gets it in the 30, 43, 44 range, it'll be kind of average, maybe slightly below average Clay season. But the thing about his numbers is that they're so identical almost year after year. And but the field goal percentage is down, and he's just shooting way more threes than he's ever shot before, which he probably should, right? Like that should have been he should have been shooting 8, 9, 10 threes per game, even when he was going great. So
agreed.
I don't know, if it's going to be a Jordan Poole who's just going to take off. Is it going to be one of these young players? Is Kuminga going to take off? It just seems like this is. Do you ever see the movie Groundhog's Day?
Maybe. I don't know.
It's just you wake
The
up
same. Oh, it's
and
the
you do the
same
same
thing.
thing
Yeah.
over, and you wake up again.
Yep.
That's what this season feels like. It's like the same problems, and then something happens, and we think, oh, maybe they figured it out. No, and then nope, next game, same problems again. So that all that is set up for what I wanted to ask you about, which is the trade deadline. Trade deadline is in 6 days, probably 5.5 days. And there are two players that are floated as possible Warriors trade opportunities. The one that I've seen the most, and we've talked about this before, we talked about this a couple months ago, was Alex Caruso.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was Rob Mahoney on The Ringer and also Chris Mannix, who I don't know if he's still with Sports Illustrated, but he's with DAZN because he's a boxing guy, but he's also a basketball guy. They both had Alex Caruso for James Wiseman as their Warriors trade. After you watched James Wiseman yesterday, actually not even yesterday. I mean, he's been hurt, so that was really his first game back, but this up and down roller coaster of his season. Are you still that protective of him when it comes to trade opportunities?
I'm definitely less protective. I'm protective of him. Don't get me wrong. Like I still think like he can be something in this league. Like I feel like he's been dealt a bad hand. And Warriors fans have let him hear it, and I feel like it's sometimes unfair. But at the same time, do I want to feel bad for people making $5 million a year? I don't know, but
I think he's like at 7.
like $9 or $10 million a year.
Yeah.
But I think I'm less protective in the idea of trading him just because of where this season's at. But hell, I think like I don't know why I'm in this Twitter space, but like someone I did a podcast with on my podcast, he's on the Down to Dunk stuff with the Athletics, Andrew Schlecht. He's on an Athletics NBA show too. His name's Alex Spears, and he said on a podcast that he floated. He likes the idea of James Wiseman coming to OKC, and I've been seeing a lot of OKC fans saying it too, and they're thinking more of a 3-team trade because I said what I told you. I was like, I feel like Kenrich Williams is the only one that would make sense to come back in that deal. And it's like, and the OKC fans are like, oh, never mind. But so they're thinking like a 3-team trade thing. I remember what you told me once, which kind of stuck with me, which was if the smart teams want him, then maybe we should not give him away. I would classify OKC in that smart team category. I feel like they are the best small market team that's like been around since I started paying attention to basketball, like the smartest small market team. So I would be makes me a little worried because there was a couple things with the fans were were bringing up. They were like showing these videos of like they felt like taking it back to the Miami game when they were in Miami, that Kerr was using Wiseman incorrectly. Kerr was using him as a drop big, playing drop defense, when really he should be like the versatile, like, okay, I get put on a switch. Like, that's not the worst thing that could happen. And that's what I was kind of saying too, how he's able to stay in front of people. So there's some conversations.
You know what the sort of the unspoken thing about that is, though, is he's coming off of a knee injury, right? So maybe Kerr doesn't want him to do that because Kerr doesn't think that mobility is there yet because he had the knee thing,
I don't know
which
if
caused him
Kerr's.
to miss all last year.
I don't know if Kerr's being protective of injuries of young guys, or I don't
Not
know.
not even the injury. He just doesn't want to put Wiseman on an island and get
It
beat.
just feels like, why not try it a couple times in a position, like once or twice? Like there was a couple times where he gets switched on to people, and it's like, wow, he's staying in front of Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, because
Like,
yeah,
why not?
and
Why not
and he
try it
and he
out a
is
little?
he's
Different,
really long.
different. Yeah, lots. I'm more. I wasn't protective of all the young guys, not trading them. I'm more like, hey, if you can get Jalen McDaniels for Moses Moody, let's do it right now.
Mhm.
I
So
just don't
that's
know
the
if
one that
I'm
you like.
there. That's the one that I like. If that's available, that's what I would do. I don't know if I'm there yet with Wiseman, because depends on the player you get back. For Caruso, I know what Caruso would bring to this team. I know that giving up Wiseman for Caruso, you get Caruso back, you're probably like a guaranteed third seed. And I know, Caruso's not some all-star guy, but he is like one of the best guard defenders in the league. He plays Warrior basketball to a T. Like, he would seemingly fit right in, no issues. I get that. But I still think what we've seen from Clay lately, of him not really being Clay Thompson, and you wonder with Steph and Draymond, it's like, okay, yeah, let's give these guys the best opportunity to get another championship, but you really do wonder how much time is left. And when that time's gone and we have nothing and nothing to root for except like a Glenn Robinson, Alec Burks year again for like 5 years straight until we load up again, that's gonna be a little frustrating. But I do get it. If you get another championship, do it. But at the same time, I still think Wiseman could be a guy. He like be an all-star guy. So I'm still weighing that, and I'd like to
What?
see like them develop.
Why does Minnesota want to trade him? Or maybe they
Minnesota want to
don't.
trade who?
You said Jaden McDaniels.
It's Jalen. Did I say Jaden? I meant
Yeah, you
Jalen.
said Jaden. Oh,
My bad.
Jalen. So the one that is they're brothers, right?
Yeah, they're brothers. Jaden's untradeable. They're not. You're not touching Jaden.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. So the Jalen is on Charlotte, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean he doesn't shoot the basketball very well.
Should I use my
So
cool little
he's
advanced analytic thing?
yeah, so he's bringing basically wing depth, wing defense.
I think he would just be better Anthony Lamb in specific areas, like defensive versatility. Like the guy, I don't know if you've seen Jaden McDaniels' game, but he legit can guard 1 through 5. Like he's
Yeah.
like 6'9" with like an insane wingspan and can guard 1 through 5. His brother is just a little less of that. So,
is he younger?
No, he's older. He's like 25.
Oh yeah,
He's the older brother.
He's way older. Got it.
Let's see if I can find
So
his stuff.
so so you're saying Moody, and what is the salary for?
Did you see Moody against Denver?
Yes.
Like, was he always this bad as like a point of attack defender? Like, I was so surprised on how, like, it felt like out of place he was the whole time. Like everyone was quicker than him, type of thing. That felt like not the Moses Moody I remember watching last year.
I mean, I think it's the Moses Moody that we've seen this year for sure.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, he has not been good.
So Jalen McDaniels is an unrestricted free agent after this year. He's only making less than $2 million this year, though.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, so the Caruso thing. Who knows if that's even on the table? But two writers had mentioned that. Going back to Wiseman, I know this probably has something to do with his confidence and with why he probably believes that he's not playing. And even listening to Warriors Plus Minus, Kawakami and Thompson were like, well, he wasn't as bad as he was, but he also didn't do anything. I just wanted that guy to try and gobble up every possible rebound that was available. And he seemed to be way more concerned about getting back on defense. Now, maybe that's a Jokic thing, and maybe that was part of the game plan. Like, don't let Jokic get out, in transition on you. But I also saw a couple of rebounds that were kind of out there, and I was like, I think he could have actually got that if he tried for it, both offensive and defensive. There is that lack of like killer mentality that we talked about earlier this year. I was like, and I know watching young Shaq and trying to compare him to any big is ridiculous. But I was watching that Shaq documentary on HBO Max, and talk about athlete driven documentary. But it was still fun because Shaq is fun. And you just watch Shaq, like his whole mentality was like, I'm getting every rebound, I'm blocking every shot. If I get it in the post, I'm just crushing people. Like, try and stop me. Like, that was just his mentality. Wiseman's different player, raised differently. He obviously wants to shoot. He wants to be a little bit of a ball handler. I get that part of it. Not everyone has the Shaq mentality. You got to have 25% of that, though. And that's probably what's frustrating a lot of Phoenix fans with Ayton too, right? Ayton wants to be the skilled big, and they're just like, can you just dunk the basketball one time instead of going for layups? Like that. I mean, that's some of it, right? And the game has changed so much, and these guys are not taught to be just put this guy under the basket type of centers. But man, I just wanted to see Wiseman. I was like, okay, Jokic is just going to put his forearm in your chest. He's going to throw a couple of post moves, and he's going to throw some sort of hook, some sort of little shot. How about you just try and block this thing instead of staying low, even though he's going to push you over no matter how low you stay? I was like, why don't you just try to block it? Like, show how show how tall you are. Maybe get a piece of it. But no, he was very, sort of wanted to hold his ground, and that he wasn't going to stop anything Jokic did. I just was like, man, if you had blocked Jokic's shot, Kerr would have probably jumped up off the bench and been like, okay. Or if you would have snatched this rebound out of nowhere and kept the possession alive, Kerr would have been like, all right. But he didn't do any of that. He wanted to stay home on everything. He just plays like he doesn't want to make a mistake, which is unfortunate because he's so talented, and that might be where Moody is as well, right? JK gets a little bit more freedom, but JK also has that mentality that he probably is like, yeah, I'm gonna get in trouble, but who cares? And
Yeah,
he
but
just plays with some freedom.
I think that's a good point. But and I feel like he's understood what he needs to do to get playing time, and he's just like focusing on all that stuff. A lot less JK on ball stuff to start a possession. It's more like he's a grenade sometimes. Um, but yeah, that I mean, I think what's ironic is that I keep saying we have the same conversation like almost every week because they're 500.
Yep.
And like we've had that Wiseman conversation before against the Magic when he had like one of the worst games we've ever seen him ever have, or maybe any player has ever had. And that's the conversation we had where it's like he plays too scared almost to like get pulled out. He doesn't want to make mistakes type of thing. So yeah, like again, if people are in favor of trading Wiseman, like I'm less protective of that idea now. Like it's like, okay, do it. For me, I'm still more like if you trade him, I want equal return. I want someone who I value or I think is equal return of Wiseman. And I don't think Caruso is enough. That's just where I stand. But I could see how Caruso would help this team, leaps and bounds basically. But I just think that like a player, like how about a Sadiq Bey straight up for Wiseman? I'd probably do that, even though Caruso is the better player than Sadiq Bey right now. I get it. I still think Sadiq has the potential. He's a Villanova guy. Lacob likes him. Villanova guys usually do well in the Warriors offense because they run a system and a set too in Villanova. So, and then Sadiq, I think, still has like can get a lot better at a wing, and he's at a wing position too. So that's probably like where my starting trade Wiseman for type of player would be, like that type of that type of guy. Sadiq Bey's value. Whoever's around Sadiq's value, I'd probably trade Wiseman for. But Caruso is just we know who Caruso is. He's reached the peak of his career, and it's a good player. Don't get me wrong. It's just not who I want to trade the second overall pick for, who I think could be a multi-time All-Star still, you know?
Caruso, like you said, whoever comes in, whoever the Warriors, if the Warriors trade for anybody, that person takes the Lamb minutes if they are a wing. If they are a 4 or 3, they're just taking Lamb's minutes. That's the player that the Warriors need to replace. And then
that's what I said in the beginning of the year, though. Isn't that what I don't know if you remember, but one of the first things I said was like, who do the Warriors need? Like just a 2 or 3 times better Anthony Lamb. Like I've just been saying that the entire year.
He is good as your 10th man, and he is
good in spurts
as your 8th man.
I could totally see a scenario where it's like, it's guys are, maybe getting injured or off to a slow start, and it's like, let's just throw Anthony Lamb in there. Like maybe he'll just shoot 2 threes and make both of them and then pull them out.
But you know who he is on this team? He is your boy Eric Paschall, or Pascal. That's who he is. Like
Eric, yeah, I guess.
I mean, maybe he's still, because I don't think he's in the league anymore, right? Is he?
Yeah, he's not. No, he's not.
So not to say that I want that for Anthony Lamb. I want him to.
Anthony Lamb's skill set will allow him to stick around more in the league. Eric Paschall couldn't shoot the 3 ball, and it was more like he just did dribble pull-ups and like tried to body people when it's like you're already undersized as it is and you can't play defense. Like, oh, Eric Paschall had the worst skill set to translate into today's game.
But on that bad team that you were talking about, he's who they would he's who they would go to when they needed a bucket.
Yeah.
And that's who Anthony Lamb thinks he is when he comes into the game. He's like, "Oh, we need a bucket. I just let me
that's who."
Cook. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, the other name that was thrown out, and I don't think you like this one at all, but
Matisse.
Thybulle,
no.
yeah. He's also rumored. There was I forget the writer who said that the Warriors were looking at him. But you're anti. Why are you so anti?
I'm also anti Vanderbilt, even though I really like Vanderbilt. I think he's like an all hustle energy guy. I just think that, like, yeah, you've made a point that the Warriors do well with non-shooters, but like, how many can they do well with? Like last year's playoff run, I mentioned it to you. It was like, you think of the people who couldn't shoot the basketball. It was Draymond, Looney, and Gary Payton. Those were the 3 non-shooters who got consistent playoff rotation minutes. And if you're getting, this trade, like you said, it's taking Lamb's minutes, and Lamb's probably like the 8th or 9th guy right now. So he's probably going to get some playoff run, whoever takes his spot. And if you want to add in another non-shooter, now you have Draymond, Looney, Kuminga. Ooh, even though Kuminga's been kind of hitting lately, Kuminga, and this next person who's coming in, whether it's Matisse or Vanderbilt, of 4 non-shooters who you don't trust to shoot the basketball in a league that's predicated around 3-point shooting, like to be successful. I just think that that's a recipe not for success, is getting another non-shooter. I think it works with the 3, but 4 just seems like too much. 4 guys out of 8 or 9 guys in your rotation can't shoot the ball.
I mean, Kuminga played last year too. He just didn't play that much in the
He didn't play the playoff rotations. He didn't play when it mattered. Is what my point was.
Yeah, it's tough. I think I'm not saying that they should bring in another non-shooter, but I do think if you do value somebody and you believe that person can lock up, they are a average to below average defensive team this year. And you remember we looked at those stats probably a month ago now, where just on the road they just give up a crazy percentage of 3-pointers, and like you're gonna have to go in somebody's court and get some stops. And so if you believe that person can do it, then maybe Caruso could possibly do it too. Like I think they would look at him in the same way, but he could shoot a little bit. Is there any other candidates who you've seen tied to the Warriors name,
just really quick,
tied to the Warriors team that strike your fancy?
Yeah, all of Matisse's numbers are down this year from like this is like his worst year of his career. He can't hit the rotation.
He's not even playing.
He's not cracking the rotation with Doc. He's shooting 51.9. Wait, hold on. He's shooting 59% at the rim. That's a 32. What is this called? 32nd percentile for wings in 2022 to 2023. Yeah, he ranks in like the Kelly Oubre, RJ Barrett range, and he's 32% from three. He's just not a good offensive player is what the point I'm trying to make here. I'm still trying to understand how to read these numbers, but yeah, not a good offensive player. Who else could the Warriors potentially get? Like,
have you seen anybody else tied to them who you kind of like?
Who I kind of like is a different story. I do like Vanderbilt. I might have to think about that one a little more, but the interesting thing is like it doesn't feel like there's that many people available names mentioned that are like, that good. I feel like outside of the Raptors guys, there's really no high level player that's been mentioned or rumored that heavily. Like the Kuzma rumors have completely fallen off because it just sounds like it's obvious that Washington's going to re-sign him now because he's been so good. But like the Raptors guys, OG, Gary Trent, Saul, okay. Ben Vliet, maybe Siakam. I don't even know if they're going to trade Siakam. Probably not. But it's just I don't know. There's not many available names up for right now, but we'll see as the deadline comes closer. Obviously, like the Kyrie Irving thing that happened today, like there are things that could just happen like that and unfold where. And there's a point to be made that we don't know who the sellers are yet because, like you said, in the West, although it's like a blessing and a curse that all these teams are so close together because all these teams think they can make the playoffs, and they don't really. There's definitely like small market teams that don't really like have championship aspirations. They're like, oh my god, if we can get the playoffs, that's a playoff check. Like that's a lot of money they can make in their stadium. So that's why that's why the play-in. A lot of teams are gonna try to go for it, and that's why I don't know if how many sellers there's going to be this year in the market. So we'll have to keep an eye out.
Okay, but we hear the Lakers in every trade rumor, right? And then we can talk about the Kyrie thing right now. Kyrie says that he wants to be traded before the deadline. I think this is a little bit of a who blinks first poker game because if you are the Nets side, you've had this guy who is still a really good player, but you had the drama with him earlier this year and his social media and the stupid stuff that he was posting. You had the stuff with the vaccine last year. So there's a trust factor with the Nets on whether or not the Kyrie business is good for Nets business. And so because of that, they're not talking, deal with him. They're not talking, let's talk about your next deal. They're kind of playing that waiting game. It's almost like, well, he's playing good now. Is he going to play good in 2 weeks? Or is he going to be happy in 3 weeks? Or come playoffs when he and KD are healthy, what do we get out of them? Are they still that killer twosome who can go to the Eastern Conference Final? So I think there's a lot of just we need to see what we have with him, and we need to see how he deals with this this harsh last whatever last quarter of the season or whatever that they want to see. And then from his point of view, he's like, I should be one of the best players. You need to show me that you see me as one of the best players. But if you're the Nets, are you that sad if Kyrie doesn't re-sign? I mean, maybe that has something to do with KD, and maybe KD gets frustrated, and then you have another problem like earlier this year. But I think they're playing poker with this guy. I think his stepmom is his agent, from what I understand, and she is a little frustrated with the lack of communication. I forget what podcast I heard. It may have been on the new Haynes and Steiny Mo show, This League Uncut, with the stupid hashtag at the front, which makes it almost so hard to search for. I search for This League Uncut in my
just look up
podcast
names.
app.
It's a lot easier to look up just like Mark Stein.
But in my podcast app, you have to actually add the show. I wasn't looking in Google.
Yeah.
Like I could have found it in Google.
No, I know. On the podcast app, I feel like you could just look up Mark Stein on the Apple Podcast app. You'll find his podcast. You click it and you press subscribe. You have to look at fact check me, but I think
Stein probably tied to a couple shows historically. Old.
That's what I did for Bob Myers' show, actually.
You
Yeah,
did.
I just looked up Bob Myers' name when the first episode with Steph came out, and it was the first thing.
So searching for This League Uncut found me nothing, and then I had to put the stupid hashtag in the front, and then it found it. But yeah, so why are the Lakers involved in all of these rumors and the Warriors are not? Maybe that says something about the Lakers and how desperate they might be. But also at the same
Yeah,
time, you have LeBron and Anthony Davis, two of the top 25 players in the league, and they seem to be in all of this stuff. So because if they were to get a third guy, I almost feel like they're even with the Warriors at that point. And
I think so too. Like if they get Kyrie, are they like Denver, Memphis level? Like just in terms of like when you're thinking of, I don't know, talent and then I guess chance to get to the top.
I think they would take a little time to gel, so that would be something. And then they're not even 500 yet, but could they get cooking? LeBron and Kyrie already sort of know how to play with each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, could they
It's a
get
team you
cooking?
don't want to see in the playoffs, like regardless of where they end up in the seeding. Like I say, if they get Kyrie, it's probably realistic that they get the 3 seed. That would just probably be realistic, and you just don't want to see them. Like even
Yeah,
I don't know if you've been checking out any of the Laker games recently. Like they kind of come down to the wire, and then
yeah, they're
the
all
ref,
close and they're
like they're
winning
all
games late.
close. And like
Yeah.
when Rui's gotten there, they've actually been like they look kind of good, and so that would worry me if they get. But Westbrook has been helping them a little bit, but he still has his Westbrook plays. But you give up Westbrook and the 2 picks for Kyrie, so.
All right, last thing. Who are your all-star snubs for the reserves?
I think Anthony Edwards is the number one for me. We did our All-Star episode, and for me, like I had like criteria of I treat every season as like an individual season, as if NBA's never happened before. This is the first time you're watching the NBA, and I say that because so no one gets like the reputation vote. Like Kawhi Leonard, even though he didn't make it, Kawhi Leonard wouldn't make it because hasn't played this year really. But just because he's Kawhi Leonard, he doesn't make it. That was one of my criteria. The second criteria was a minimum of games played type of thing. It's more important like minutes played. Like you had to be like over like 1,100 minutes for me to count you. And Anthony Edwards has not missed a game this year, and he's like the reason why Minnesota is at the 6th seed right now. And Jaren Jackson Jr., I did a little spiel on him where it's like I get that he's the defensive player of the year front runner candidate right now, but I almost feel like that Memphis defense as a unit is already like pretty darn good, and him just being in it obviously makes it better and takes him like one or two in defense, and he's the defensive player of the year leader because they're 1 or 2 in defense. But I looked at him, Draymond versus Jaren, par for par, bar for bar, punch for punch, and all the defensive statistics that I think matter, they're tied in, or Draymond's better. Like I feel like people look at blocks and steals too much to calculate a good defender. And like if you block a shot, that doesn't even mean you got possession. You could block a shot and they still get possession. The other team still retains possession. I just don't think that's what makes you a good defender. I think what makes you a good defender is that defensive field goal stat where it's how do you guard? How does your matchup score on you? I think that's what makes a good defender. And I think defensive versatility as well makes a good defender. And I think Draymond is a versatile defender, but we don't see his versatility that much because he plays like the help side quarterback and he's not really like guarding someone at the perimeter. It's more like reading stuff and then reacting, the read and react stuff. But I just think, I don't know, I'm just always impressed by Draymond every time I watch him play defense. And I can't say the same about Jaren, but their stats kind of do line up. It's just that Jaren's in this good defensive team who's ranked 1 or 2, and it just makes it obvious that he's probably going to get that award. But we're talking about all-stars, and Jaren is still below 1,000 minutes played, and he is like tied with like Paul George in games played, which is weird. So think this. I think Paul George.
Well, Paul George made the team, didn't he?
I'm just going to say numbers off the top of my head because I think they're around this ballpark. I think Paul George is at like 11 or 1,200 minutes played, with like say like 35 games played. I think Jaren is at like 35 games played, but he's at like 800 something minutes played.
He only averages 27 minutes a game.
It's because he fouls out all the time. It's because he gets into foul trouble, so he takes away his minutes, and so he's not playing that much. And I think he missed my minutes per game thing. Like he missed my cutoff.
His fouls are actually a little bit down historically this year. Like he's doing doing a better job, but also because he's had the knee injuries, I think they just don't
They don't try it.
Come the playoffs, he'll probably tick up the minutes a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised you didn't say De'Aaron Fox. I thought that would be the one that
when you line up them, and I know it's not, you shouldn't just look at stats. You should do eye test too, obviously. Stat for stat, Edwards has him in like every category. And I think De'Aaron Fox is the second best player on his team in a 3 seed. And I think Anthony Edwards is the reason why the Wolves are at the 6 seed. And I think if you want to give a team 2 representatives in the All-Star game, I don't think the Kings were the one to do it with. So that's just where I stood on it.
Denver didn't get 2, right? They only got
10,
1.
yeah, they because there's Jokic is just like far and away their best player, and their second best player is like, think of it like worse than like Wiggins last year, and he got an All-Star nod. I guess it's like a way I'd look at it.
Jamal Murray not having
Jamal Murray. I think Aaron Gordon had the better chance.
Yeah, that was we heard that one. Aaron
that was a name that I heard being floated. But I think that yeah, my issue was Jaren Jackson Jr. making it. I think I tweeted right away. I was like, I have 5 reasons why Jaren shouldn't make it. Yeah, and he hasn't. He's just
16 points a game. 6.5 rebounds.
Like you always get your token defender, like in every All-Star game, like your token defender always just gets the All-Star nod. And I think it should be like that. Defense matters and stuff, but I just don't think Jaren was the one to do it with. I think Nick Claxton has been better hell. But on the East, I was surprised Siakam didn't make it. That was definitely the snub, but I get it, the bad record, but it's like he's clearly the 5th best forward. No. Yeah, the 5th best forward in the East. You have your top 4 in the Embiid, Tatum, KD, Giannis thing, and Siakam's like clear cut in a way like 5th, and then you can go like Bam and like Julius Randle. But I think the record thing was definitely what kind of took him out of it, and I understand that. It was weird that Harden didn't make it. That was a weird one. Drew Holiday got it over him, and I'm not too mad about it because I think Drew Holiday has been like, having a good year. He's pretty available when like Giannis and Middleton have been down and like trying to keep that team afloat while they've all been down. So I get it. Trae Young didn't make it. I'm kind of happy about that, but I was surprised he didn't make it. So yeah, I think my main snub is definitely Anthony Edwards and Siakam. I'm just really surprised Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards.
You would have put him over Jaren Jackson.
Him over Fox over Jaren Jackson. Yeah, I'd put him over Paul George too.
Yeah, Paul George is an interesting one. I mean, Draymond didn't make it. Draymond's having this thing, he just doesn't score the basketball, but assists and rebounds, solid. Obviously, he plays great D. I knew he wasn't going to make it, though.
I knew he wasn't going to make it, too. But I tried to make the argument in my podcast group of like, guys, like, look, like Draymond and Jaren are like damn near identical players in terms of defense, which is what they're both known for. And Draymond sometimes has the edge on him in some important defensive stats. And they just cut me off. They're like, dude, he's not going to make it. And I was like, I know. And so,
all right, predict. We'll get out of here in a second, but I want you to predict, do the Warriors make a move at the trade deadline that is actually substantial? I'm not talking about like, dumping Ryan Rollins for a second-round pick or anything like that. Like, do they make an actual move to improve their basketball team to make a push for this playoffs?
Oh, my goodness. There's so many things that can happen from here until the trade deadline. It's such a weird trade deadline. I feel like we just don't really know for most teams, and we would have a better idea at this time of the year. And so it's hard to make that prediction, but I'm going to say like 51% yes, 49% no. Like it's still like, I don't know if that seems like a lame answer, so I'll just go with the yes. I think a Jalen McDaniels, not necessarily the player, but that type of player, that rank of player in like the Vanderbilt range and the Tybalt range and the Jalen McDaniel, they're all in like that same tier of player, basically. I think we get one player of that tier, and I kind of hope it's Moody gone. If there's one to part ways with, dude, he was so unimpressive. I'm confused. We watched him in Santa Cruz like this bucket getter. Like, yeah, the competition and the talent's down in the G League, but man, he was taking tough shots. He was hitting tough shots, playing good defense, but you put him out there and he's like supposed to be this 3-and-D guy, and he could not stay in front of someone, which was wild for me to see. And then obviously if his shot's not hitting, then he's a minus player out there. So,
okay, I'm going to make a prediction here.
Do it.
The Warriors going to Dallas. Draymond.
Dallas coming here.
Oh, sorry. The Warriors play Dallas. Draymond's going to suck it up. Luka is not going to play. The Warriors are going to win that game. Then Oklahoma City comes on Monday. Warriors are going to win that game. They go to Portland on Wednesday. They're going to beat Dame. Warriors are going to win that game. They're going to be 3 games over 500. And then the front office is going to go, see, it's working.
Yeah, we don't need to make a move.
And they're not going to make a move. That is
it wouldn't surprise me. But also, I feel like on the Giants podcast, like Brad is the one who's overly optimistic on record, and you're the one who's you're more pessimistic and more realistic when it comes to record. No disrespect to Brad, actually.
No, yeah, he's
probably guessed the majority of them right.
That's why I like him, because he's very optimistic about it.
No, yeah, but I think you're the optimistic one right now for the Warriors and saying they'll win 3 straight games. Have they won 3 straight games once this season? Maybe
I don't even say it because I believe it. I just say it because it's going to be like, of course that's what's going to happen. Of course that's how they're going to talk themselves into this team is good enough to win the title. That's just what's going to happen.
I think we're going to be having the same conversation next week, like I've been saying for the past couple weeks. It's like, oh, they're good. Oh, they're not.
Well, they have 3 games for the deadline, and then after the deadline, the Lakers. So if the Lakers do make a deal, that Saturday game is going to be kind of probably a big deal, right? It's the day before the Super Bowl in San Francisco. Lakers come to town. It's an ABC game. It's LeBron and his, and his subtle tweets with the eyeballs and the king crown. Whatever happens there, like that all of a sudden becomes a giant game if the Lakers make a deal.
Yeah. Let me pitch to you a scenario and we can close it out. Or if you want to close it out, but let's just say like all the contending teams that we think that, are better than the Warriors right now and have a shot at taking out the Warriors in the playoffs. Denver, Memphis, Boston, LA, if they get Kyrie, like that's the only way if they get Kyrie, Bucks, and even like a Phoenix. Like say they all make a substantial move. Say Phoenix gets OG Anunoby or Memphis gets OG Anunoby. What if Denver ends up with Jalen McDaniels? What if Vanderbilt goes to Boston? What if Jay Crowder goes to the Bucks? It's like if all these teams are making these moves, not just for like a player, not for like any player of like they get someone cruddy just to fill out the back of their rotation, like an actual player to contribute to a playoff roster. Like I'm really wondering, like, would the Warriors stand pat? Because I feel like they're not a team to make desperation moves. Like that organization, the front office is like, they're smart, and I don't think they would do something like that. But if all these teams really start to make these like kind of go get it moves, and the Warriors are standing here with all these assets and not going to do anything, like that just feels un-Warriors like or un-Light years like, honestly. So I'm wondering, like, is the KD thing?
Well, then you're giving up Wiggins and everyone else on the who's young.
Fine with me.
What did they do last year at the deadline? Did they do anything? I feel like because they already had they had Otto, they had GP, they had Kuminga, they had Moody, all those guys.
The only player who I remember being on the roster and not being on the roster was Jeff Doutwin Jr., who I think was two-way though. So that's why I think he wasn't. I don't know if it was a trade deadline move, but I think he was on a two-way deal. So
yeah, it's not very.
I don't think they. And the year before that was the Wanamaker year, right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
I'm trying to look and see if they did anything. I don't think they did anything.
I don't think so either.
What? You remember?
Well, I was going to be completely off from this stuff. I was going to say that JaMychal Green's starting to hit threes. I wonder what his percentage since the Cleveland game when they like won the game they shouldn't have. Like I think he's probably been like a 40-something% 3-point shooter since then.
You know what he's also still doing? Missing dunks.
I think that him and Wiseman lineup that felt on purpose. I think that's what Slater was saying too, that they were trying to see how that looked together, and it didn't look awful from what I was watching.
Well, but then in Kerr's meeting with Wiseman and saying, league changes and you got to adapt and whatever, he was saying that he's playing JMG ahead of Wiseman because JMG is playing better. And I was like,
yeah, but was that the 4 center line?
Really playing better?
Is that the 4 centers line? Like we can't play 4 centers or whatever that line was?
Well, I
Is that the
think he
one?
had like a one-on-one meeting with James, and
Oh,
when he was talking about that meeting with the press, he was saying that they've chosen to go JMG over Wiseman because they think that he's playing better right now.
JaMychal at the 5 is like a bad decision. Like, I don't
He's
know how them
they
being
they made him
the
guard
smart.
Jokic yesterday. That was not nice.
Yeah.
They were like, "Come on, you've done this in practice a lot. You know
Yeah.
his moves." And he's like, "Yeah, I know. He's gonna throw forearm in my chest. I'm gonna fly backwards, and he's gonna hit a little shot."
I don't know how you play JaMychal over Wiseman, especially at the 5. Like, I think JaMychal's kinda Anthony Lambing it offensively a little lately, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of.
All right, what's up with the BAM this week?
We're gonna do a trade deadline preview on Sunday. I was supposed to talk to a scout last week that didn't fall
Mhm.
through, but that's I that'll happen in like the next week or two.
Cool. All right. So that's it. We'll be back next week. I'm not sure the date yet because I have to actually go into the office on Thursday. So if we record Thursday, it may have to be a little later. But the Warriors they have Thursday, Friday off, so we could either do it Thursday or Friday. But yeah, Ben Cruz says he is going to join with us, so that'll be fun. Our text conversation becomes the podcast about Warriors basketball. All right. So for Bry, I am Double G. See you when we see you. Peace out.